So as someone who grew up in the late 80s and early 90s, of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was something that was, well, it was just mandatory to be a fan of. The cartoons, the movies, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was absolutely huge during this time frame, and of course, that translated into video games as well. Some of the best beat-em-up games of all time are TMNT games. But we've definitely seen a resurgence of the Turtles in the modern era with new films, new cartoons, and really a huge onslaught of new video games. Now, there's a brand new game for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutants Unleashed. This game just came out. I decided to pick it up on the Nintendo Switch, and well, I have quite a few things I want to say about this game. This is a $40 game, and is it worth your $40 purchase? Well, we're going to kind of decide that in this video. If this is your first time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But without any further ado, let's talk about this game. So this is following the new movie that just came out semi-recently. Now, I never watched this newer movie. I've kind of just held on to my nostalgia with this. But basically, the world and the characters and all that sort of stuff and the attitude of the characters is based on that more modern movie. Now, if you know anything about more modern stuff, they like to dip their toes into other things. And as a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan of the old school stuff, the story of the game was actually, I don't know, it was kind of interesting, I guess, but you could take that in a couple different directions with this. So essentially, the mutants in the city are kind of acting up a little bit, but we don't call them like mutants. We call them moobies because they're new mutants, and the new mutants seem to be acting up, and there has to be a reason for it, and we have to figure out the reason why. The story is actually touches on quite a lot of like things that are mentioned by youth in the modern era, whether or not they really know what they're talking about with the situations or not. And it's definitely geared towards like that sort of, you know, younger demographic, but like not in a sense of like kids like the original Turtles was, but more so in a sense of like, you know, what you might see on TV and stuff like that. The characters, such as the Turtles, use words like sus and riz and stuff like that. There's a bunch of interesting side characters that you come across as well that have stories of their own. Like, I don't know, man. It's kind of taking it in a more, I guess, serious and kind of grounded direction. But these are giant turtles that can talk and stuff like that. Like April and Leo are like dating, and I'm pretty sure that there's laws against that because April is a human and Leonardo is not. But, you know, as this kind of plays into the game as well, because it's not just a standard sort of action game. It's a game in which you basically have X amount of days until you have to do your next mission. And in that time frame leading up to when you do the mission, which you can do the mission right off the jump if you want to, but you're supposed to go around and talk to other people, talk with your friends, and your friends are all dealing with their sorts of problems. But talking to your friends does unlock different things. There's a skill tree section of the game in which you can level up all the different turtles by getting experience. And one way to get experience is by talking to these people and building relationships with them. So it's kind of interesting, I guess, in that regard. You know, I've seen some people say it's a bit like Persona, which I don't really know because I don't play Persona games, but there is kind of a connection built between the characters. It's not really a connection that I necessarily cared about, but the more interesting thing is some of these characters do end up leading you into different side quests and side missions and do unlock things that do impact the core of the game. Now, as far as the actual gameplay is concerned, once you jump into it, it feels kind of familiar, I would say. You know, it is a 3D beat 'em up game in which you can only play with up to 2 people, which is kind of weird, because there's 4 Ninja Turtles, and it's only 2-player local co-op. There is no online play with this as well. I don't know, a bit of a missed opportunity. But all of the different turtles have all different sorts of abilities that you can level up. You can unlock new moves by collecting experience. And of course, there are VHS tapes that you also come across that boost your experience as well. And the combat can feel pretty good at times. There's also some interesting traversal things that end up happening as well. You can grind rails on a skateboard. You can also do wall jumps and wall runs and and stuff like that. They try to blend in a bunch of different gameplay mechanics, and I think some definitely work better than others. But for the most part, like, I didn't mind the combat. I honestly didn't mind the combat. Some of the boss battles are pretty interesting and fun. Some familiar faces, but they've been kind of recast into different roles. Like, you're cool with Bebop and Rocksteady, which is something I didn't really expect until they turn against you because of what's going on in the city. What is happening? Oh, you'll find out as you play throughout the story of the game. There are also training missions. I mentioned that there are side quest missions as well. You can deliver pizzas for Bebop and Rocksteady, which is like a platforming sort of thing. The dojo gives you different things that you try to do. You beat a certain amount of enemies in a certain amount of time with different caveats attached to them, and you gain more experience. Overall, I don't think the gameplay loop is bad, but the execution of it does leave a little bit to be desired for me personally, because I just, it's hard for me as an older Ninja Turtles fan to like try and take it a bit more serious, and it definitely does try to take itself a bit more seriously with this game. But I mean, that's fine. I get it. Every story is not going to be for every single person, but there are definitely issues with this game. The first thing is the camera system. Now, the camera system in this game, it's automatic. You can't really do much with it. You could sort of move the right analog stick around a little bit to get a different perspective, like very slightly. But for the most part, it's a fixed camera, and the camera just, I don't know. It feels kind of like something out of the PS2 era at times. Like your vision, your line of sight will be blocked for some things. Platforming kind of plays a role into that as well, because things that you think you can jump directly to, you overjump it or underjump it because the camera isn't really in the correct position for things. I think the camera definitely holds back the gameplay a little bit in this game. But really, one of my main issues with this game is within the combat. Whenever you hit someone, the camera kind of shakes, and when it does that, it I don't know, it seems like it's an unnecessary thing, and for whatever reason, you can't turn off the camera shakes either, which I didn't really like about that, because it can be a little bit jarring. The performance on the Nintendo Switch doesn't seem to be completely up to par either. Now, you might notice, as far as the graphics are concerned, some areas look better than others. I think the outside areas look a lot better than the sewer areas, and it's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to the eye. You do get different costumes within the game. I went ahead and bought the $3.50 1987 retro style Ninja Turtles that I just thought looked really cool because it's tugging on my nostalgia string, so I could play as them throughout the game, and I did like the way they looked. I thought they looked pretty good. But the problem kind of with the graphics and the performance of the game is it feels very herky-jerky on the Switch. Sometimes there's like random loading that happens. It just doesn't feel like super smooth. And that also plays a role into platforming segments, but more so into the combat of the game as well. Because the combat is very fast and frantic, and you got to have a smooth frame rate in order to translate that to make it work really well. And I just feel like it's a little bit herky-jerky on the Switch. The load times seem really long as well. This is a Unity game, so I do believe that some Unity stuff doesn't, coincide very well with some Switch games. I don't know. I could be pulling that out of my ass, but I'm pretty sure I remember seeing that. But what's interesting about it is when I look at the gameplay footage on other platforms, which I have done, it definitely looks a bit smoother. Now, that could just be the video that they're showing. I don't know. I'm capturing my gameplay at 1080p 60, so we're getting the best frame rate available on the Switch, but it is definitely noticeable, and it does kind of take me out of the experience a bit. I will say the audio in the game is pretty good, though. Like, there's lots of voice acting. I think the music is pretty well done, and, it's all the booms and bops and, sounds of the city sound really good. I think they kind of excelled in the audio department with this. But as a $40 game, to only be able to play with one additional person, and it has to be in local co-op, and there is no online play, I feel like that kind of hinders the game quite a bit. It is a very different Turtles experience, and I don't think that that's necessarily bad. I think there are people that will enjoy the more in-depth conversations and the interesting cast of characters. But for me personally, you know, I'm more so about the action with these games. I've never played a Turtles game like this, and I think it will hit better with some people than it will for others. I do like the retro skins. I think that was a really smart thing because it definitely made me spend the additional $3.50 to unlock them. I believe you can also buy some figures that come with codes that also unlock it too. So, you know, if you're a Turtles collector of the modern era, there is some value within that. But the game itself just feels a little bit off. You know, I don't think it's one of the better Turtles games that we've seen recently. It's definitely very rough around the edges, and I think the Switch version of the game is a bit worse than the other versions of the game because of the technical performance of it, which when you look at the game, you wouldn't think that would be a big deal. It's not a super graphically taxing game or anything like that. So do I recommend the game? I mean, if you're a diehard Turtles fan, like, you're gonna buy it. But if you have a different platform, you might want to check it out on there or wait for a sale for the Switch version. You know, it's rough around the edges. And there are moments where I genuinely do enjoy the game. Like, sometimes the combat just flows really well. But there's a lot of downtime as well. And for me personally, I don't know. You know, I wasn't quite expecting that with this game. And, you know, maybe that's what kind of turned me off a little bit towards the downtime sort of sections. But let me know in the comments section down below. What do you think of this? Have you picked it up? What do you think about the gameplay that you have seen on the screen here? And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.